This is R&B, the podcast. Russ and Blake. This is the show that you'll love today. R&B, the podcast. Russ and Blake. Let me know if I make any mistakes.
Or keep it to yourself.
All right, y'all. Welcome back to R&B Podcast with Russ and me, Blake. Thank God for this opportunity to have this conversation. It's a little chilly outside.
Yeah, man. How are you feeling today?
I feel great.
Yeah, you woke up, trained the client.
I woke up this morning. Yeah, I got to the gym at 6:30. Worked out myself.
Real.
And then worked with a couple clients. Head on over here to share some dialogue. And we had a little change of plans today, but it was really easy for us to segue into continuing on with the show.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, inspired the topic of adaptability.
Yeah.
And adaptability is something that I feel I've really had to work on because I am a fan of structure. I think that structure and organization and planning is important, but things don't always go as planned.
Yeah, man.
And the hospital taught me that because we try to anticipate so much, but you have to have a plan B and plan C.
So in football, what makes for a good audible? Like how, if there's an offense that knows when to audible and where to go, how do you train to make the right reads in a football team?
Well, you have to understand the defense also, right? So know both sides of the ball and understand coverages and also have the communication of how you're going to signal the audible and sometimes there's movement involved in changing the formation. Sometimes it's just a change of the play, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the head honcho, the quarterback's going to be the one to make the decision of whether or not it's going to be necessary. And I think that you're actually a better audible caller than I am.
Because of Madden?
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, if I were to explain in Madden, an audible is similar to what you're saying. I mean, I'm reading the formation that the defense is in, and then I'm reading their intentions, whether they're going to be in a man or a zone. Right. So if it's in a zone, I'm going to want to run a certain type of play, and if it's man to man, depending on if they're pressing my receivers or if they're off my receivers, then I'm going to have them do a certain type of route.
And the same goes for basketball to an extent, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, audibles occur when your original plan is obviously failing, right? I mean, you think about Division I basketball, it's so much of the same talent across the board. It all comes down to how they execute. And as the season gets longer and you get deeper into playoffs, execution is known by everyone. So now it's who's audibling or who is making variations out of their original plan better and quicker. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Because when you're at that level of competition, your skill is not going to be what sets you apart anymore.
It's your execution.
Yeah, the guy lined up across from you is probably just as good as you, or maybe even a little bit better than you. And then it's going to come down to the play calling and the execution. And, taking that out of the sports context, I, have explored different professions, and I think a lot of people our age has done that. And it's hard to get off of a path that you've already trailblazed, right? And explore a new opportunity or a new interest that you may have. And part of that is being adaptable as well, calling an audible in your life when things may not go as planned, or, maybe you met someone, started a relationship, and then you're making adjustments so that you can respect their wishes as well. And I think that being able to do that is important and might be why some people aren't able to make certain relationships work out, because you really do have to adjust your plan if somebody else's life is going to be prioritized in yours as well. So
yeah, and I mean, we're talking about how the first step of this is awareness of the fact that you even need to audible. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
that's not so easy to read, like within a relationship or even within your own personal growth.
Mm-hmm.
But what would they call that? Like, not a red flag in the sense of it's something that would make you not want to talk to this person, but a red flag in the sense of, oh, this is where I know that I need to make a change, and I need to do it quick, or I need to do it strategically to make sure that I uphold this relationship
Mm-hmm.
or this endeavor.
Yeah. That'll be a result of reflection,
Mm.
right? If you sit with yourself and really think about your actions and your intentions and your desires and put it all together, then you kind of get an idea of whether or not you're being fair to yourself and the people you care about.
Mm.
And that has to happen at a certain time in your life also, because you need to prioritize yourself.
Yeah.
You are the most important person in your life, so bringing somebody else into your life can sometimes disrupt the progress that you're making with yourself, I think.
Mm.
And I don't think it's anything wrong with somebody admitting to that and maybe taking time to really focus on their self and make sure that they're in a place that it's appropriate for them to try to prioritize someone else almost as much as their own
Yeah.
well-being, right?
That's real.
Yeah.
That's really real, because you're taking on a whole new set of responsibilities that you need to be held accountable for. It's good to be able to reflect.
Right. And the same goes for having a kid, but a lot of people are forced into that situation before they're ready to do it. So it can be hard to be adaptable in that situation. But
Oh, dang. Yeah, like a lot of times just the circumstances of life will make you have to audible or make you
right,
have to
right.
change.
And I see a lot of people handle that surprisingly well, I think.
Bro, I
You
feel
know?
like that, shout out to God, to be honest, because like
Yeah.
no matter on how we perceive somebody's situation, seeing like looks like something that could derail them, or even if they believe it, there's still going to be an organizing principle around what they're doing. And
Yeah.
you can always kind of
Yeah.
come back to having faith that the right thing is going to occur, or this is at least going to turn you into the person that you're meant to be.
Yeah. Because I know I was anxious, like leading up to becoming a father.
Mm-hmm.
Like the closer it got, I was like, oh, this is actually happening. And then I would look at other people I know that same age and their kids are already like 8, 10 years old. And it's like, well, if they figured it out when we were 18, like I'll be all right. Like I'm equipped. Like I'm gonna have to make some adjustments. You got to be adaptable. And you know, I'm blessed to have come from good parents, and so I've seen firsthand what it takes to be a good parent. But a lot of people kind of figuring things out on their own because
Mm-hmm.
they might not necessarily have the role models in their life that have displayed what any of that process looks like, and you can't really anticipate any of it anyway because it's different from kid to kid, family to family, relationship. Uh, and so again, I commend people for figuring it out
Yeah.
because I think that I'm an intelligent person. I put a lot of effort into trying to figure certain things out, but it seems like something that is just so natural to us and innate that the average person figures out how to be a parent.
Mm-hmm.
We can compare and try to label somebody as not a great parent or the best in the world, but when it comes down to it, they make it happen, raise these kids, at least the 18-year commitment.
Mm-hmm.
Like when people do something at that scale, it should really make you feel powerful enough to do anything. It is one of the hardest things you could possibly do. Probably one of the most amazing things you could possibly do.
And the most like inspiring thing,
Should be, yeah.
for yourself and others, is inspiring. For me, a lot of the things that I want to create in my life are mostly to be able to foster like a healthy home, and I haven't gone off on that endeavor yet, but that's one of the more inspiring things, is to have those principles around my house and
Yeah.
the area that my
We should always
family.
be looking to change and grow, right?
Yeah. How do you think? So it's January 15th, Monday, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Reason why we're able to do this in the middle of the day. I
Yes.
have the day off as an observed holiday, working in the school
Yes.
system, and I'm wondering, adaptability. Talking about the civil rights era, talking about Martin Luther King Jr. Imagine how adaptable these people had to be to certain climates they were in. They would go to a part of our country to have a demonstration or even just to talk to people, and they would get there and figure out that everyone had blockades set up for them, or there were people trying to stop them from being able to come and speak, and they had to figure out what was going to be best for them in that moment, in that life, you know, constantly talking to their loved ones, not knowing if they're going to make it to the next day, still striving to get their message across and see the change happen in the world that they envision and that they believe in. You know, it's really interesting to think about how that uncertainty would sit within like your psychology, you know, knowing that everything you're doing is putting a bigger target on your back, and whether it comes from legal problems or someone attempting to assassinate you, you're seeing your peers in this field also get targeted, and you got to keep studying and keep praying and keep going. You know, it just is amazing to me to think about the spirit of the men and women that were in that civil rights era and how they stayed true to their mission and how we observe it on a day like today, but also not many people are tapping into that energy as what we are observing today.
Yeah. And, you know, it's something that should be recognized more frequently than one day. But, yeah, it is important today just to at least acknowledge those efforts, because we don't have a lot of people like that.
Are you
And,
saying like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.?
well,
Like that bravery? Is that kind of what you're saying?
like all of the people that were involved in that movement,
Yeah.
you know that we lack leaders in our community, and I'm not talking about just the black community. I'm talking about communities in general across the world. I think that there are positive efforts being made by a lot of people, but like you said, sometimes those efforts come with developing a target on your back. So, you know, as we look back on history, it is inspiring, but I can see why it could be scary to someone to like take that leap of faith to be that change in the world, because somebody's gonna receive that opposite of your intentions. That's just how it's gonna be, especially as you move closer towards accomplishing your goal, because someone is gonna be threatened by that change, because we're not all adaptable. And so the people that aren't adaptable and open to change will often, you know, feel threatened in those situations. And that's when those kind of violent acts end up happening, when there seems to be so much progress in a positive manner. And I talk about the importance of collaboration pretty often, because I think that that's just one of the most amazing things that we are able to do with our minds as humans, is collaborate with each other and cooperate with each other and
For sure.
do that at a scale, right?
Yeah.
And then so when I see so much confrontation and aggression and disagreement, that's like a really low level of thinking and interaction to me. But we also view that in people of power and status, right, that are leading countries and organizations. So it gets a little convoluted in what is the proper way to make the world a better place, because it's like the little guy working his way up hits a ceiling and is met with a lot. And then if you're already in a certain position, there does have to be a level of matching those other people, or else your collaborative efforts aren't going to be received. So it almost feels like certain good people have to diminish their approach a little bit so that they can mesh a little bit better with everybody else. So I only say this because I would like to increase the awareness of the difficulty of that road, but the importance of having people that are willing to do it. Because there's a whole lot of things, a whole lot of jobs that the average person is not going to be eager or willing to do. And I'm always extremely grateful for that one person that steps up to the plate, whether it's the trash man or the cleaner or the president of the United States. Those are three jobs that I don't want to necessarily do. So it's like when the right person gets in that position, everyone else that is fearful of making that journey needs to make even more effort to support that person that is going to do a good job in that role.
So then why do you think that they're so oftentimes met with just criticism and judgments towards what they choose to do that actually helps everybody in a position that needs to be filled?
Um, I mean, the people that aren't courageous enough to make the step are always going to have an opinion at the end of the day,
Sure.
and think they know the right way to do it. But at the same time, they won't do it themselves. So
Yeah. That's
you
the
kind of have
crowd.
to, yeah, you have
That's the
to
crowd booing.
have a middle ground there. But also, again, it's going to bring change to whatever is currently happening. When things are a certain way, they're that way for a reason, regardless of the context or setting. So when someone's coming in to alter that, there's going to be an opposing party. And, if you want to have a political discussion, it's like, I just never understand having two opposing parties to make decisions. Because to me, it's always just going to be back and forth, tug of war, and never come to a conclusion.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, hopefully one person's faults would be learned by their opponent, and then they would do this kind of symbiotic growth cycle because they're forcing each other to adapt basically to what's necessary as we go through time in our country. But there does need to be more opposing forces. I mean, that's the idea of competition. You can't just have one or the other win all the time because it's better as a trio or it might be better as four or five.
yeah, that's my thought that, adding another, I guess, cut to the pie, the 50-50 is just ping pong. So,
And there's a lot of other countries that have like learned this and do that.
I mean, look at
style.
business structures. Any good business model is not two people making decisions ever,
Yeah.
It might even be one person, but as soon as it's just two, oftentimes you're not going to be nearly as efficient in decision making. But again, the importance of collaboration, the importance of building a team, you know. Shoot, if we have three presidents, that might be a better answer.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But I think that division of power in certain settings is very important because power can be corrupt pretty easily. I mean, you see like a head coach that puts his hands on a kid because he just feels like he's this dominant force, can't control himself. It's like, well, that's abusing your power. We've seen it in educational settings. You've seen it in basically all relationships. It's like you let that power boil over too much in one direction, then it's hard for someone to maintain that responsibility in the way that they're supposed to. So
Definitely.
there needs to be some way to mitigate and have some. I mean, the
Humility.
checks and balances,
Yeah,
right?
it really should be, the more that you're put in a position to be able to help people. Because if you're a servant, if you're a president, like you're a servant to the people in theory. If you're a coach, like you're serving your team, you're put in a position to lead and most likely get paid more to serve more people. And that should be a humbling experience, right? Like for a human being, that should humble you more and be like, okay, now I have more responsibilities. More people are looking for me to make sure I make a sure decision and a righteous decision.
Right.
That should be a very humbling process. But for the people that you say like kind of let that power corrupt them and it goes to their ego that they are even in the position, then they will make choices sometimes that can be just like brash and aggressive because they identify as taking all the fault, right? You see like the head coaches, they get mad really quick. It's they know that if something goes wrong, it's all on them, or they feel like it's all on them. You know what I'm saying? And it's not. It's a group. You represent a group, and you're there playing one portion of what this collaborative effort is.
Right.
And that should dissolve you back. That should like humble you back because it's like, okay, I'm just one of 20 that are here today trying to make sure that this thing runs. If we just take the example of a basketball team, if somebody didn't turn the lights on before practice and mop the floor, like you have no foundation for a sound practice. You got a slippery floor that could be dangerous. You know what I mean? So it literally took everyone's effort for us to get to this finished product that's good enough to go compete wherever we compete at. You know, but the first person who takes that whole group and says that this is all on me, whether it be a player or a coach, no matter who it is, they're gonna taint the entire group. You know what I'm saying? Because now you identify way too much with our result, and you don't identify with like our collective growth and resilience.
It needs to always be us.
It needs to always, no matter what.
The success and the failures. That's why, you know, the whole squad got to run suicides because Johnny showed up late, you know. But of course, like in the moment, nobody wants to take that accountability for someone else's actions. But that's also why the coaches that are able to treat their players fairly and have that level head and take accountability when it's necessary, those are the ones that have the long-term success. And then that has kind of a trickle-down effect into the team, right? Because the players see that level of accountability and how the coach interacts with them, and so they respect the coach, in turn respect each other, and then that's how you have the proper cohesion to have a successful team dynamic as well. So
Dude, and also back to how that emotion can show itself once you start adding people that the player or the coaches know into a crowd. Those people come and become spectators. That seems to fuel that, you know, desire to make it all about you even more. Now, like your woman is watching you play, your family just came to watch you coach or play.
That's why you should always perform like you're being watched.
100%. Always perform like somebody is watching you. And even, it's funny because I remember when I was younger, I used to be at the park shooting around, and in my mind, it would like imagine like, oh man, like Indiana's head coach just drove past in that car and like peeped that there was a kid out here getting buckets. Like I would think like that. Like I was just always being watched by someone who could like put me on to the next level.
You'll hit that one shot right when they drive by and they're like, wow.
It'd be a dude on a bike. I'm like, oh bro, he probably like, it's got like every single person that would pass. I would just imagine like they were able to like kind of criticize me at the highest level, and they would see me be like, oh, he grinding. Look at this kid. But it's never that. I just got to park by myself. Just using my creative imagination.
But having that mindset kept you going, and it made you motivated, and it did allow you to reap benefits in a different way. Because we never know what that moment is going to look like. So you still ended up having your moment and your opportunities. It just manifested in a different vision.
For sure. It's so interesting how once you add somebody watching you, and you know if they could put you on or something like that, how that can change your performance.
But then when you think that way, you end up not performing to your highest potential.
For sure, bro. Because you see these professionals, they're the same exact thing all the time. That's what makes them professional. They're able to just tap into the same performance, ability, and all this type of stuff.
Yeah, there's nobody that could be in the stands that's going to get them out of their zone.
Nobody.
Everybody's watched them at some point already.
Everybody's already critiqued, watched them. They just do the same thing over and over again for years, if they're blessed enough to do that.
Yeah. You know, I think that when you set your sights high and really try to attain things that might seem out of reach, and you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, that a lot of times you surprise yourself. And again, I think that the end result isn't hardly ever what you expect it to be, but I just would like to inspire anybody listening to shoot big, you know, shoot for the stars, because we need people to do that. And the worst thing that can happen is you fall down and you get back up. Nobody's going to judge you for failing. When it comes down to it, you're going to get more judgment for never trying to do anything.
Yeah, and from yourself.
And from yourself, which is the most important thing, right? Your own perception of yourself. And when you try to do difficult things, you'll be more impressed with yourself and you'll respect yourself more. And that self-respect will manifest in other people respecting you. So, you know, I try to have conversations with a whole lot of different people. I have conversations with extremely confident people and conversation with people who don't believe in themselves at all. And then everywhere in between. And it's interesting because when it comes down to it, those people are facing similar, like, I guess, roadblocks in life and difficulties and misfortunes, but they just perceive it a lot differently, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to feel like you're the victim in the situation. It's easy to feel like you're a victim when life isn't going your way, especially when it's happened consistently and it seems like things are just stacking on top of each other. But the people I've met that are intentional about trying to make good things happen or step out of their misfortune to continue to do good for other people, it's interesting how positivity just seems to find its way back to them eventually because they don't let the negative things in their life take away from their how they operate, right?
Mm.
Because we're gonna have a lot of roadblocks and unexpected events, but once you dwell on those and let it take away from the time that you can spend really contributing to the world, that's when you fall into a situation that's really hard to get out of. But people see your efforts when you fight through those situations, and that's how you kind of get a stronger team, right?
Yeah, dude. Like the freedom that we possess is measured by how do you respond to things. You know what I'm saying? Like with the freedom we have, we're able to respond to different situations how we choose. And I feel like that's the big indicator or difference between these people who are either really believing in themselves or really not believing in themselves. Is because when things happen, the people who super believe in themselves are like, all right, next decision up. Like I got to just keep going. Whereas this person on the other end that might not have as much faith in their decision making is going to dwell on what happened to them, and they're not going to get up and make the next choice. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I
Yeah.
think people like to challenge themselves with things like playing golf or with little activities that are difficult, because the people who start to get good at moving on from what just happened quicker.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
And that's
hey.
that's what it is.
Yeah, yeah. Because as soon as you have that bad shot and you keep thinking about that one bad shot, and it's
Mm-hmm.
3 holes later, like you just messed up your whole game.
Yeah, I've experienced that so many times. Like I could go a whole 80% of a game with fine decision making, get to one part where I mess up, and it's like, all right, how quick am I going to get back to what I know I am? Like how much am I going to think about this way I just
And
messed
we've
up?
seen it happen so many times, right?
Yeah.
They're cooking, and they have one bad play and they just let it
Mm-hmm.
fumble into just a sloppy finish to the performance, right?
For sure. I'm not even trying to judge the officials in the NFL because I don't know anything about football officiating, and I know that they're
Mm,
professionals for a reason. But I do see sometimes in these playoff games, like one call will go wrong and then another call like soon after, and it makes me think like
they're
that
trying to
first
make up
one,
for it.
yeah, that first one probably sparked
Yeah.
their like awareness of and pressure they feel, and then the second one was probably the mistake responding to that. Sometimes, I mean, I'm not trying
No,
to
that's
judge
a
or,
pretty accurate
right, it looks like
observation.
it sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, it's probably in all sports. I could see how the psychology of that, because you want the crowd and the players to be on your
Sure.
side, right?
You feel
You
the
want to be
equilibrium
fair.
off.
The ref does want to be fair,
Yeah,
right?
for
So
sure.
when they're perceived as being unfair, they like subconsciously trying to make up for it and get everybody back on their side when really they need to put it behind them and
Yeah.
move forward and just continue, right?
That's the right thing. And for the
Yeah.
players too, for everybody, it's like the minute you failed or you were in error, you got to get right back on track to being like the person that you're intending to or performing the way you're intending to. And
Yeah.
that goes right into life. You know,
You just got to take accountability and keep
100%.
moving.
Yeah. It's funny though. You watch somebody like a Michael Jordan, you know, watch Last Chance or go watch his highlights. He was unconscious, bro. Like it's almost like the mastering of the consciousness that comes with failing. Players like him and Kobe, it's like they learned how to completely master their emotion when they fail and not think that their skills are diminished because of this moment of error. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? That's still 100%
Well,
faith in yourself.
they have a different measurement system of their performance. They're literally out there to perform. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they of course want to win as like a a product of their performance, but their goal is to perform at the highest level that they have been training to perform at.
Yeah.
And so once they've accomplished that, all the other things just fall into place, right? Because they're playing their role, and so at the end of the day, they the only way that they're gonna look negatively at their outcome is if they did not perform to the best of their abilities, but they're always bringing the same energy. night after night after night, and didn't make any excuses, and would take accountability and be back in the lab and fix up whatever mistake they made. They were confident that whenever they made a mistake, it wasn't going to happen again. You know, and that mistake was going to propel them to be even better. And then the best of the best expect to fail, because without the failures, you never have the opportunity to build into the best possible version.
True.
You're not being pushed if nobody's making you fail.
True. And then also they expect abundance, you know.
Right.
Eventually they expect for that to rain out and they drop 65, you know, they expect that the same tried and true formula will produce abundance one of these moments, probably more than less, you know, if you really have faith in it.
Yeah. They put the time in.
Yeah. It's so beautiful how our belief about what it is that we should receive comes into play as we're trying to master something and yield certain results that we want from it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't even know if it's like what we think we should receive, though. You know, I feel like the people that are really able to manifest. I mean, well, I guess the idea of manifestation is really envisioning like what you want, but also a piece of that is just being happy and content in your own being, and like knowing that your efforts are valuable.
Sure, like if you can imagine what you want, then the day-to-day getting to what you want is helping you walk in a purposeful step. So
what I'm trying to get at is like, you know, the Buddhist angle of like having wants and desires, right?
like leads to suffering.
Right. So a piece of that is kind of just being content in the journey.
Right. I think that the way you mesh these two is like I desire to be the person moment to moment that would get what it is that I want. You know what I'm saying? Like if you desire this certain result, then you have to love walking the path to your result. Because once you get to the result, it's like, man, whatever. The path of what you're you know, walking is your purpose. You know. So I think that's because I totally agree with the Buddhist philosophy that the sufferings lead to desire. And like you're saying, that's only if you don't understand that like each moment is building to what it is.
Right. You can't look past the journey towards the desire. Yeah,
because then you just sit there and wallow. Everything's too far away to get to, or everything's fleeting. Because like I'm saying, once you get it, it's not even cool anymore. And that's the real part of the Buddhist thing. Is like that's what you have to come to grips with. Is like when you get this great reward, you're still going to be sitting there just as a human being that's you know, mortal.
And that's science. We were just talking before this about how it's the leading up to the exciting moment that you actually have that dopamine response, right? And then once you get there, that's when it drops off. So the same thing with any process leading up to it. That's what you need to learn to enjoy, because that's what's going to be most meaningful and give you the reward.
Yeah, and the character development. Like as I'm striving, my character is being chiseled every single day, and it's a beautiful thing. You know, as I'm embracing it, you know.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful thing. I've talked about on this podcast where it's like, oh, you pray for strength, and these hard things happen to you, and then you're like, whoa, like, can we tune that back a little bit? But it's like, no, because one day you'll be reflecting without the emotional attachment to it, and you're just gonna feel all that light that your traumatic experience morphed into from your healing process. It's like this light you're carrying.
Yeah, it's kind of just that transition into a flow state, right? And all of a sudden the car's just driving itself and you're holding on to the wheel, and which can be a scary feeling, but you've already paved the path. You just got to continue to drive down it.
Yeah.
So hopefully we continue to accelerate, because this year is starting off hot.
Real.
And it's exciting to see. I think that, you know, in 365 days, we're going to be in a very different situation, not only for us, but for the world. I say think, but not think. It's an election year. I keep forgetting that.
Yeah, this is a big year.
It's an election year.
This is a huge year.
You know, a lot of things happen in election. It's an Olympics year.
It's an Olympics year?
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's an election year.
No wonder. Yeah. So I feel like those are things that aren't always in the forefront of my mind, but I can just feel like the excitement of the globe.
Dude, and I feel like I feel more ready now to experience and process whatever is coming my way than I ever have.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, it's very interesting. I'm just like, I feel like almost any stimuli coming my way, I'll be able to process it in a healthy manner.
Yeah, it's a blessing. Good place to be in. Because it's easy to get knocked off track. Little things can knock out. I've knocked myself off track. I had some candy last night that I shouldn't have had.
Same.
I don't even like really eating candy,
That's
but
funny.
it was there. I was like, man, I got a little sweet tooth. But I can just tell like the difference in how my stomach feels, and my energy, my sleep the next day, and especially like right before bed. That's awful to do.
Yeah.
I never really do that, but you know, sometimes you slip up, and then you just got to hop back on the horse the next day. I've seen a lot of cascades in my time. People let things turn to an avalanche, snowball effect when, and we'll admit to it. You know, I think me and you talked about it's like, well, you eat one thing you shouldn't eat, then you're like, oh well, today's kind of already in the dumps. I'll get back on it tomorrow. Rather it just being that one thing you eat, which really wouldn't have been that detrimental.
Yeah.
But we sometimes take things a little too seriously. You know, that people, my clients, I'll say people, my clients will tell me about their diet, and they'll be like, but I did have blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't care. You got to treat yourself sometimes. But it's when that but turns into like a whole weekend of gluttony, then that's the issue, right?
That's interesting, especially if we were trying to bring that concept back to talking about adaptability. You know what I mean?
And I mean, you have to kind of adapt to your mistakes sometimes. And I mean, it's very easy to just take a turn and stay in that direction, but you can take a turn and turn back. You just have to have that mental fortitude. And sometimes it takes accountability to have that control too.
Yeah. Supreme accountability.
Yeah.
You know, and that's probably the closest you get to feeling very energetic, content, happy, and light is the most that you're able to take accountability for your actions. And that can get very difficult. You know, I think that's why we should take our ethics serious, because you might do something that you don't have a philosophy to be able to like forgive yourself for, and then it can get very difficult to maneuver at going to sleep and just having your mind at ease. I don't think we understand how important it is to kind of check our morals and ethics,
Yeah.
and be very intentional with that.
Point. Yeah.
Because you're taking care of yourself by doing that. You know, you're honestly doing self-care by walking in a ethical way.
And I think that's a realm that it's hard for people to be adaptable in. Because if you thought you were being ethical and then are educated, sometimes you may have been doing something that doesn't really agree with your current knowledge, and that's kind of hard to cope with sometimes. We've seen that in the grand scale in history, right? You know, people taking part in something that everybody else was doing and they thought it was the right thing, and it turns out that their perception was off.
Yeah. I think that those are interesting phenomena, because some people pass away without ever knowing that what they were participating in had a detrimental effect to other people, or that it might have been unethical. It's probably the only people who has brought to their awareness. Now they have to cope with the fact that that's happened. But technically, they would be a victim, you know, if they didn't have the information to be able to make the right decision. You would kind of be a victim to your environment, you know. And that's interesting, and something that you have to say very humbly, because you could easily be just as plagued by that phenomena.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put that, but I do agree with you.
Yeah,
it's just some people could be triggered by that thought that someone was acting out of good faith and doing bad things, and they never knew they were doing bad things. But, you know, if you are the victim to that person.
Yeah, bro. And I think that's what the argument for the people who don't want critical race theory taught in the public education system, that's their argument. Is like, we were doing bad things out of good faith. You don't need to come and like repurpose the narrative and teach our kids that it was actually out of bad faith that we were doing those things. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's what they're trying to say as I study that and try to understand it myself. because I do understand the whole like don't come back and say all of our ancestors were just terrible people trying to hurt people, because some of them really weren't. They were just entrepreneurs, or they were just frontiersmen, and they were just going with the business practices of their time, and you're trying to paint them as devils and all these different things. So I try to understand that side, and but I still feel like a certain narrative of history does have to be said. That's a true one. And it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day, so that's confusing. You know what I mean? Like I was trying to figure out like what this all like kind of means, and what they want, what they expect.
Who?
The Department of Education, you know, because I don't understand fully what historic conversations or lessons are critical race theory to them. But I know that they don't want critical race theory taught, because that's on the homepage for theirs on the Department of Education. This is right there. You know, it says if your child has been like a taught critical race theory, you know, contact us and let's talk about it. All these different things. They don't want it happening.
Yes. Well, Russ is a teacher, y'all. For those of y'all that don't know, and Russ is of mixed race.
This is true.
So when he has these conversations, half of them's white, half of them's black. He's coming from a very neutral position.
Yeah, as neutral as I possibly think I can be, bro.
Right,
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I genuinely am trying to be empathetic for every person on each side, because I love every person on each side and my family. You know?
And yeah, it's difficult. Good old government funded programs, you know. I
No, I hear what you
the
said.
Department of Education, I think, is gonna not be so responsible for our education in 10 years.
Sure.
Because a lot of information is just gonna be available in different contexts from different companies and different, you know, with different agendas. So it's one of those battles that, you know, you as a teacher is very important, and I'm glad that you're so aware of it. But at the same time, to me, it's like for my daughter, I just want to figure out how I'm going to make sure I can gather and present her all of the information that I think she needs to know.
Real. And that's accountability.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful, you know. And I think you're 100% correct. That's kind of the perspective we need to have is, you know, education amongst the home, integrated.
I used to be very against homeschool. Think about like the social effect and not being able to take part in certain extracurricular activities, but there's a lot of ways around that. And I don't necessarily want to homeschool my kid. I got some time to figure that out, but it's definitely a viable option at this point in time, right?
Yeah, I hear you.
So when the time comes, I think things will be a lot different by the time my daughter is in high school.
Yeah.
Which I think is like one of the most important times as far as like education and preparing her for the world. Like all of that basic foundational knowledge, I'm not honestly too worried about that, because I do think that a lot of that is the responsibility of the parent to facilitate too. So
as far as like your identity or your cultural identity.
Well, that goes, and even like basic reading and arithmetic.
Yeah.
You know,
it's so interesting how much just home practice of a skill can change a child's whole educational path. If you guys just work on some math or reading, like.
And I was talking to my wife about that just a couple of days ago, because I was just trying to navigate and think to her, like, how is it that some kids have the opportunity to skip 4 grades and go to college when they're 14 years old and things like that? Like, what setting are they in that sets them up to even do that? Because there has to be more people whose minds are capable, but they're not in the proper setting to actually be educated properly and be given the opportunity to have those leaps.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
So I just went, because I try to, you know, be realistic about my perception, but I do think that my child is advanced. So I'll just keep like asking people, so like, how do I make sure she's in the right environment that she can, you know, reach her potential and take advantage of opportunities that are appropriate for someone of her ability, you know? So,
And that's such a good question that you're asking.
but what makes me sad is that a lot of my friends that are teachers, they're like, "Oh, you don't want to go to my school,"
Oh yeah,
you know?
yeah. Probably most public education.
Yeah, and that makes me sad because there are people that I respect and they're teachers that I'm like, oh, I'll say like, oh, I can't wait till she can be in your class, and they're like, no, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, man.
So
That's
like,
fair.
what institution can I go to where all the teachers are on the same page and presenting information that is innovative and accurate and positive, and that also believe in the institution they're working for? Because
I
I
mean,
think
that's
that that's
definitely going to be a
important.
private school in the area, especially in the
Right, which
area
is
we're in
sad.
right now.
Which is sad that it
Yeah.
has to be that, but you know, is what it is.
Yeah. You know, in the area you're in right now, the public schools around there are going to be good schools.
You know, but they're like they changed.
Really?
Yeah, they really have. They have.
Mm.
And that, I mean, because they were good schools,
Yeah.
but you know the leadership I think isn't there. You hear a lot. There's like way more fights now, and the overall grade point average is lower, and
Wow.
they're not having as many kids get scholarships. And
Bro, these kids in the district I work in, there's a lot of school fights that get
yeah,
reported
it's because
incidents.
kids don't know how to talk to each other. They don't know how to articulate. They don't know how to take.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, we used to have a lot of fights at our school.
not
but
a lot.
Yeah, I wouldn't say a lot, but
Not a
there would
lot.
be fights. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't if there was a fight, it was a huge deal. But maybe once a year, twice a year, we would.
Which
see
I
a
don't know.
fight.
Some people don't think that's bad. I've literally heard people of status and power say that like one thing that's wrong with these kids is they don't fight. Some of these kids
Oh,
need to get
true.
hit in the mouth. I'm like, okay. I never been in a fight. If you listen to this, I'll say that on mic right now.
Yeah.
I've never punched somebody in their face, man.
Man, that's
Like,
yeah.
27 years old. I don't plan on ever doing it. I think that's one thing that made me nervous too. I'm like, I can feel that I've had to adapt into being a father, and part of me is like that protective nature that I feel I'm more capable of that than I
Yeah.
have been in the past, which is like it's good because it's necessary, but I don't want to be in that situation.
That's good, man. I feel like that's the best way to humbly walk.
So don't
with a
test
lot of-
me.
Right, like I was gonna say, like I feel like that's the best way to humbly walk with a lot of strength. You know, is
Yeah.
you're like, man, I feel my protective energy inside of me, but
Yeah.
I don't want to hit anyone in the face.
I guess I have with gloves on.
There you
You
go.
know, it's organized. Never in a street fight.
Yeah, I
Put it
feel
that
you.
way.
And that's good. That's a testament to your ability to get out of a
Also
situation.
try to stay out of these streets.
That's true.
You know,
Well, yeah.
I've always
I remember
used intuition. On
I
my
remember in
side.
school one time. I thought you were gonna hit a kid in the face. Remember? You
Oh
like-
yeah, but I didn't.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't. And you know what's funny is like you were so upset with this kid that in my mind I was like, oh, Blake definitely hit him. And then I see you guys and you're like, nah. And I was like, that's cool.
That's
I
like-
remember feeling proud in that moment.
No,
I was like,
I've had times in my life where I've been extremely angry with people.
yeah,
And just like we were talking about on 2 episodes ago, I think, like we all have bad thoughts. We all have aggressive thoughts or naughty thoughts. Like I'll say
Nah,
it,
I
bro.
feel you, though,
That's
yeah.
like natural
Naughty
humans,
thoughts.
like, and it's something that people don't want to admit to. But
Yeah.
when it comes down to it, it's what you do. Your actions are what's important.
Yeah, bro.
So like, cope with what's going on in your head.
Yeah, let your stream
be
of
honest with
consciousness-
yourself.
For sure. Let your
Figure
stream
it
of
out.
consciousness go by and observe it. You know,
Yeah.
observe it without the judgments. On what's good and bad.
But yeah, all those times that I wanted to knock somebody in their mouth, I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Every
the
single
consequence
time.
is too heavy,
The
and you don't
consequence
even
is too
want
heavy.
to. Mm-hmm.
I got too much to lose, and I don't want to. I don't want to harm someone just because in me in that moment. That's why just being present is so important. You
Yeah.
know, like evaluating your situation and really thinking before you act. Some people can't process quickly enough to think before they act, and then the action comes before their brain can figure out what they're doing. You
Yeah.
know, but some of those instincts just got to be under control, especially if you want to. I mean, well, yeah, if you want to have control,
Yeah.
I guess not everybody wants to have control. Some people don't want to be in control. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with being in control, and sometimes when you just act like the world is doing stuff to you and you have no control, it's a little bit easier to go about it in that way.
For sure. And we can talk about adaptability with that, because you have to be able to adapt to the environment, even if your
Exactly.
environment is sending you signals of distress. I can take, for instance, with teachers that have disruptive classrooms. You are adapting to a whole new room now. If you have like 4 students that are disrupting your class and purposefully being disrespectful, and
It sounds awful.
yeah, but honestly, it's not. If you handle it like the correct way, if you adapt to it in the correct manner, you can use that situation to show your calm, cooler head can prevail and you're the educated and mature one. You know what I mean? Or you can try to identify with their energy and let it hit you, or they said something that hurt your pride and now you want to stoop to a lower energy to communicate with them, and that's where you get yourself in trouble.
How do you guys handle threats from students?
Well, I would do a threat assessment if I thought that it was an actual threat. I mean, it just matters how much my understanding of this student and the believability, I guess, of
There's
what
just
their
like
threat
so
is.
much anticipation that goes into your job and like trying to read the kids and
For
like
sure.
keep the environment safe.
That's
And
the clinical perspective.
yeah, so I just was curious because obviously you want to like avoid physical confrontations, but you don't want to like over exaggerate certain situations
For
too.
sure. And you don't want to give too much reaction to a
Right.
statement that could just really be a maladaptive behavior because they're upset.
I'm just thinking like, because you work with mostly women and they have to navigate these same situations as you. So I get what does that process look like, helping them determine if they need to transition into more of like a defensive or like alarm type scenario?
I mean, I would suggest with anyone in that type of situation that if they feel uncomfortable, like make sure there's more people around. If they have any uncomfortable feeling, no one's going to judge them for saying they needed more people to like be around them just because they felt uncomfortable, just as an adult or a human being. You know what I mean? So that would be like the first
collaboration.
step. Collaboration,
That's always the key. Yeah,
and then obviously, you might have some students that are, saying sexual comments to them, and if in the same sense, if they don't feel like a physical aggression, but they feel uncomfortable in that sense, just like have other people, or if you've been threatened and you want to report that, you can do like a threat assessment. We can have somebody talk to them and figure out what's even really possible. Most students, like I said, they'll make threats as like a maladaptive behavior, but that's especially in 2024, dude, that's a very difficult line to try to balance because of the climate we're in with like school shootings and actual things happening inside of schools. So, kids know what they can say to get people to be like, oh my God, but there is someone who will actually do that and who actually does have access to what they say they do. So you have to, take it all serious, but at the same time, you don't want to reinforce something with so much attention, and make the kid think that, oh, I could do that and make everybody so startled and get so much attention if I just say this.
And
because you can get the same attention by working super hard and coming and doing something that is amazing and positive, and you'll get the same amount of attention. That's one thing I spend a lot of time trying to get kids to understand, is that the attention you receive from your negative choice, it might be quick, but it's very fleeting, and it actually leaves people thinking that there's something wrong with you. Whereas if you took the time to gain this attention in an appropriate manner, it's going to feel better and it's going to be more motivating to you. And it might be actually something that you can use to have a positive life and
But people, I feel like nobody was interested in gaining attention regularly until we got cell phones and computers,
No, I think that I think that we've always been socialized to like look for the attention of people. You know what I mean? Like your daughter right now, she probably is like looking for your feedback with your eyes. It's just like attention.
But like once you get into like the teen and adulthood population, you got to think back to a time where people spent most days with their families or like on a farm, and their neighbor was so far from them, and they're not constantly interacting with other people or witnessing other people's I guess glory and how much attention they're getting, comparing that way.
But they would still be conditioned with whoever is like parenting them. You know what I mean? Like all of their decision making is going to come from what they were able to like get their caretakers to look at them and give them
Right,
attention for.
Because the opposite of attention is neglect.
Exactly.
So
So imagine, for some of these young kids that we'll work with, it's like they've been neglected, and then they learned that a certain negative behavior can actually get them the attention that they're seeking.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So then you learn to get the eyes just with the wrong behavior or a maladaptive behavior. So it is like such an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Such an interesting
Again, you have
thing.
to be able to adapt, or else you maladapt.
For sure.
Yeah. So you gotta teach adaptability from a young age. But if your basic needs aren't met, then it's hard to do, right?
Yeah.
And that love is a part of it.
And then we, and a lot of this art that we create, musicians, movies, and all that type of stuff, it kind of resonates because for a lot of us, we have a certain part of us that feels like it wasn't fully like maturated, or we haven't, fulfilled this certain part of our spirit. So we love to listen to other people that can articulate a traumatic event in an eloquent way, or in a way that helps us vibe, or maybe even release some of that energy in a cathartic manner. It's crazy. It's kind of like we all relate with that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you said that, because I sometimes have trouble understanding the like the diehard fans in certain contexts, and I enjoy music, but I've never like connected with a negative song, and I know people that have, and that used to confuse me. But it's just
Really,
when you live a blessed life.
I don't know, man. Like I'm trying to think, because I think about some of those like Eminem songs when I was younger.
Oh
I
God, dude,
with
I've never connected with an Eminem song.
Yeah, like Stan. You didn't like Stan when you were younger?
I've never connected with an Eminem song, bro.
Dang, man, that's crazy. Yeah. I feel you though. That's really
that energy does not align with me.
Immortal Technique, like there was never any.
I mean, yeah, I'll listen to it.
Yeah,
but
like,
I'm talking about connecting.
I get what you're saying.
It's only been the positive vibes that I've ever like really been able to feel.
That's real.
Yeah,
that's real. That I can't say the same. I was imagining, I don't know why, but it was like the song Stan. He's talking about a bunch of crazy stuff, but I remember going on that emotional roller coaster with the, writer and the characters in the song, and being somewhat.
Maybe it's part of me that doesn't allow me to do it. I don't know.
It's good though, because what you're saying is a way more healthy thing. It's like, more resonate with the positivity.
Yeah.
But as human beings, sometimes our shadow loves being represented, and we want to indulge in it.
The shadow. Have you seen Us?
That's with
Jordan Peele.
Yeah, the Jordan Peele one. Yeah.
Yeah. The second time I watched that, I liked the concept of the shadow people, like had kind of that experience that doesn't get to experience all of the positive, and that concept's interesting to me. I don't know why it popped in my head when you said shadow.
Yeah.
But those opposing factors, and then it kind of just comes down to perception again to me, But
because you're not gonna you're not gonna drown your shadow. You're not gonna make it disappear with some type of practices or anything. Right. What you're going to do is integrate it. Yeah, exactly. Like you integrate it into knowing that you are a duality, and you make the positive choices and you try to be a great person, but it's not like the ability to do the other way. It doesn't always exist with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're all in this thing together.
For sure. Humbly.
One and the same, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just feeling grateful.
Me too.
Feeling grateful for the world. Prepared. And just to see another day. Mm-hmm. What else you got?
Man, I don't have anything. I feel grateful as well. I feel prepared. I feel ready. I feel blessed that we have an nationally observed holiday today, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I hope everybody...
Shout out Dr. King.
For sure.
Long live the King.
I hope everybody is brave in their endeavors and, walks with their head up and does the things they want with intention and feels like they have the right to the power and the things that come to them,
Yes. And take care of yourself, because you deserve it. And if you need assistance with that, contact Elevate Personal Training, LLC. You can email me, Blake at elevatehealth.coach, or visit the website, elevatehealth.coach. And as far as this beautiful production, thank you to Rhythm and Balance LLC. Where would we be without thee? If you need any assistance with your production, or you want to reach out to inquire about being on R&B Podcast with Russ and Blake, you can email rmbpod@gmail.com. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, share again, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Please find us. We're also on TikTok, Instagram, RNB_pod. You can find us all over the place. We want you to continue to walk along this journey with us because we want this thing to be as big as possible, simply because we are all one in our belief. So as many ones as we can add to this concoction will make this world a much, much better place. And that is exactly what our intention here is. And that is exactly what we're going to make happen. So spread some love and positivity every opportunity you get. And
Like last week, we'll see you next week.
peace.